Hello and welcome to episode 23 of the Silver and Black Coffee Hour from the Zoom Void. This time, as my dear friend and co-host Aaron Blackerby put it, it is January 20th, 2025, and pretty much the only thing going on today is that it's cold. That's, I think, all that people will remember this day for is that it's cold out there. And when it's, sometimes it's cold, and like when it's cold out there, it's cold, like, so Zach, how are you, Zach Montana, how do you prepare for a cold spell like this?
I throw a log in the fireplace and I just hope to get through it. That's what the Spurs are trying to do right now.
Aaron, what about you?
Um, for the longest time, I used to be like anti wearing socks in my house when it was cold for some reason. I don't know why. I just was like, oh, I don't like socks are for shoes or whatever. Now, put on a nice pair of wool socks, you know, maybe put on a blanket and yeah, just be really lazy. That's how I get through a cold day. And later tonight, we're gonna have Brenner at my house, so
I love
Uh,
Brenner.
yeah, breakfast for dinner. So there's some good comfort food there too.
Heck yeah, I
How
love
do
that.
you how do you take care of the cold, Tom? How do you deal? You're from the Northeast, so like you have a
Yeah,
lot more experience with this than us.
but the thing is, my baseline is all screwed up now because I've been in Texas for like 7-8 years, and so
Yeah.
like my equilibrium is 20 degrees higher now, like, no joke. And so, like, my mom will make fun of me when she came and visit the other, like, in December, and it's like 50 degrees out and I got a big puffy coat on, and she's like calling me soft, and I'm like, dude, this is cold for me now. What about it? I'm like, I'm now less of a man. Okay, I'm sorry. But one thing that my mom taught me about blizzards and, any sort of, natural disaster or storm or something where you might be stuck in the house and immobile for a while, is you do three things. First stop is the liquor store. Second stop is the hardware store. Third stop is the grocery store. So I hope you went to the liquor, hardware, and grocery store in that order. Um, I got a bunch of like outdoor faucet covers and beers.
Yeah,
Uh,
I did two of those three today.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's but we'll get through it. We'll get like an inch of precipitation tonight, maybe. I don't know. Speaking of cold spells, though,
Yeah, let's jump into it.
your San Antonio Spurs are having a not so great time in the last three games. We got four games to talk about, and thank goodness for that Lakers game. Two games against the Memphis Grizzlies, one against the Miami Heat, and now heading to the Paris games here. We're going to talk about all of that. And I know that on Saturday we're going to be at a watch party for one of those Paris games. AB, what are the deets on that?
Yeah, it is at the Armadillo Den in South Austin. We are going to be posted up there again doing fan interviews. So for any of the fans that see this that are based in Austin that come out to that show, come find your boys out there. It should be a lot of fun. The game starts at 11. They're telling people to show up at 10:30 in the morning. So I know from talking with Ali that he had some really cool French ideas that he wanted to impart for this watch party. So they're always giving away free tickets. They're giving away free drinks at these things. You can buy Spurs gear as well. I have no idea if the Coyote will show up.
Well, the
Technically,
last the
the
last
operations.
last watch party that we went to, they gave tickets to San Antonio Spurs game.
Yeah,
So, like, to everybody who was there and signed in. So they're really making an effort. I'm glad that there's a theme. I love a theme at anything. I want to. I'm excited to see how French this gets. Um, but yeah, that sounds like a good time. And we did get a little bit of news today. News that frankly like caught me completely by surprise. Spurs rookie Stephon Castle is going to be in the dunk contest. So Zach, I want to start with you on this one. Um, how do you think Steph's chances are, just based on what you've seen from him as a dunker this season? And then, do you have like a favorite dunk contest, like memory or dunker or whoever?
Oh, well, easily the dunk contest with Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon goes down as the most memorable one. Nate Robinson doing his thing, jumping over people. Obviously, as a young kid, being a short lad myself, I was like, man, maybe one day I could do that. But then I grew taller than 5'6", so I thank God that happened. I can't dunk over a car, but I'm 6 foot. Nate Robinson, haha. So, anyways,
Yeah,
got you, buddy.
Take that, Nate
No, so
Robinson.
anyways, I hope he can incorporate his vintage two-handed behind the real hard slam into a dunk that he uses in the dunk contest. Uh, Unfortunately, I don't think they judge for hardest dunks. They judge for the most flashy dunk.
right.
So I think we might have an issue there, but I do expect something nice. He did pull out the windmill this year in the game. He's pulled out some big dunks in game. He'll have something up the bag, up the.
You raise a good point, which is that he's a kind of fun package and combination of like a smaller dude but
Mm-hmm.
a power dunker as a point guard, which is like fun to see. Like I think that's what made that Zach LaVine one so fun. Was it was like, oh, like he's mauling the rim, you
He's
know?
gliding.
And
Well, I
what
was,
about you, AB? Favorite dunk contest memory?
man, I mean, I'm basic as hell on this, but Vince Carter,
Yeah,
you know, the Vince Carter dunk contest was just such a dominant performance, and that like he clearly won it, and he still kept elevating
yeah,
during it. I mean, that was amazing. And as far as like Steph Castle dunk, he had a really great putback dunk a few weeks ago where it was the first time I'd really seen him like jump out of the gym. I haven't like really seen in his gameplay that he's like got the highest vertical. But this one I felt like I clearly saw like his like elbow at least get over the rim. But he's been a great end-game dunker, especially lately. He's got that kind of he's got actually one of my favorite types of in-game dunks where he is like dunking on the side, like to the side when he goes two hands. He doesn't like go to the front rim, and like he kind of clutches it from the side, and it always looks like so badass. So I'm excited for him, and I'm glad he took it on. And I one like I don't really think you can like embarrass yourself in the dunk contest these days because it like hasn't been that great as a whole, like as a product
yeah.
in general. But like if Stephon Castle can use this to further elevate his player profile in the league as well as like up his chances within the rookie ladder, like this sort of thing does help with that like down the line of like creating more memories for yourself. So I'm glad he's taking it on. And he said yes. I was very surprised by it though. I was like, oh, it's kind of an in-game dunker.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think you kind of said it like some of his most impressive when he's leaving his hands on the side of the rim like that is because he exploded up and got here and like looking
yeah.
down into the rim and then came down on it, right? And that makes him really really good at those dunks where it's just like exploding up out of the trees and you know it's fast hard throw the ball down into the hoop type of dunks, which are like really really fun in game, right? And I'm excited to see what he brings to this. Um,
Hold on,
but
real lightning round question for y'all
yeah,
on this. Does he incorporate Wimby?
I mean he'll probably have to, right? But he can't jump over Wemby, right? Nobody can jump over Wemby.
Dude, I wonder. What do you think, Zach?
You think that's how he got this? Because I was gonna say, I don't think like Spurs fans had a big campaign like Steph Castle needs to be in the dunk contest. Like,
No.
I was like, where did this come from? What if it came from? He was like, "Yo, commissioner, I can
Watch
do
this
this."
video.
They sent him a tape from practice of him jumping over Wemby, and they were like, "Book it, easy."
I could definitely see Memphis
I mean,
getting involved. 100%, 100,000% something to do with maybe a pass. I don't think he could dunk over Wimby. I don't know. It's a big old leap to do there. But
I mean, we used to say the same thing about Dwight Howard
I
and
also
Shaq,
don't have
right?
those young knees
You
like
know,
Steph Castle, so he can do it if he wants to
I
do it.
know.
I'm
I think if
excited.
he tries that, they should let him use a trampoline, like the guys, like the gymnasts in between the
Well,
whistles, like when it's a TV timeout
it's almost like
and they bring out the mascot to like jump 20 feet in the air. If you're jumping over Wemby, you get a
well,
trampoline.
it's almost
I
like
think that's
he
allowed.
has to have like
I,
a seat. Like even then, when he sits down, it's still a
Right,
big deal. Like you jumped there when you sit down.
right.
Tom, I think you just brought up a great point for the dunk contest. Bring in a trampoline and have some more like NBA Jam style dunks.
I
Like four
mean,
times through the legs while you do a 720. Like,
yes,
make it ridiculous.
absolutely. Make it slam ball, except probably not going to happen for liability reasons. But
Yeah.
we can dream, right? Put it in the next 2K. Make yourself
Yeah.
useful, Ronnie. Come on now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of
Oh no.
liabilities, I'm going to use this to segue into the week that was. Uh, because man, that was some rough stuff, fellas. We'll start with the positives though, with the Lakers game, which really at this point, I know it's only been a week since then, but man, it seems like so much has happened since then. I'd say that this was probably our most ethical win of the season, where 99 points were scored by our starters and only 102 were scored by the Lakers as a whole. Um, I mean, it was kind of the learning curve of Unk Ball from the team, where Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes just said, "Hey, watch this. We're going to pick on Austin Reeves and we're going to bring bullying back into style." And boy, did they. So, I mean, and here's the other stat from this that I want to kind of leave to y'all, because after we see this stat and we're going to be like, this is so cool, this same thing happened to us the rest of the week. We scored 73 points to the Lakers 40 in the second half. And I was so impressed by that stat. I was like, wow, like we really turned on the second half. Like, is this a new leaf here? And it wasn't. So what do you guys have to say about this game?
So you mentioned Unk Ball, dude, and that run in the second half, right? You said this was an ethical win, and I think it was. It was certainly the most bureaucratic win of the year, and by that I mean, as a longtime hoop watcher, there's nothing more annoying than watching Chris Paul just like pick apart your team to death in the most routine and mundane and I'm going to do this until you stop me way. Like I would rather go to the DMV than watch Chris Paul do what he did in that game to my team, right? When
Right.
he's doing it for my team though, I'm at the DMV with my pom-poms, Like woo! And that's what I got from this game, man. Spurs started the fourth quarter on a 27-9 run that effectively ended the game. 18 of those points scored or assisted by the Unks, and I mean, just a really, like I said, man, they just they took all of the fun out of it and all of the drama out of it by pounding the rock and dribbling the air out of it and pick and roll switch, pick and roll switch, pick and roll switch. Harrison Barnes has a mismatch and something's going to happen. And
Yeah.
uh, you know, it was it was just death by a thousand cuts and the least fun thing to watch for Lakers fans, I'm sure. But like, you know, that was clinical.
Really was. Zach, what do you got on this game?
Game changed. Spurs were down 10. Devin Vassell dunked all over AD. Then Wemby steals it, goes back down, windmills it, does his thing. Game completely flips on his head. Kelvin Johnson hits a big three to tie it to go into the fourth quarter. And as you said, old man basketball takes over. But what I do want to touch on is they had 16 steals, good defense, 66 points in the paint, good offense, 30 assists, good offense. You're never going to lose a basketball game by doing that. That's what they did in those games. It seems like a year ago since I remember watching that game. Feels like haven't witnessed good basketball in the second half like we witnessed in that second half. I'm going to tell you some stats here coming up because Tom was saying, or y'all were saying, oh, it was so great watching that second half. 73 points. Well, AB, I got bad news. It's worse than 73 points on us. So this we'll get to the next subject on
Well, I appreciate that, and we probably have more ranting on the rest of the week. So, you know, we have been talking about this for a while. Like, are we feeling like they're going to break through on this? And I'll say, like, at the end of that game, I did not feel like it was a breakthrough. And maybe that's because of the way the rest of this month has gone, that like it's been pretty rough, and we knew it was going to be rough with the schedule that we had. And I was just kind of like, that was one of the more level-headed wins I had, and maybe it was because it was a blowout that it was like kind of easy to like emotionally prep for like, yep, we're going to win this game. Like you said, Zach, those turnovers led to that dunk party in the third. Steph Castle had 14 in the third. Really great. But then we decided to play this team in Memphis that might be modernizing the game of basketball with the way that they play offense. And I got to say, watching this Memphis team reminded me of something our own Zach Montana said at the beginning of the season, was that we are not deep on the wing. And I really feel like we were exposed in our size in this game. So I'll jump into it though. Um, in that first half of the Wednesday game, we had a really good first half with them. We were even leading going into the second half. And then the Grizzlies just decided to turn on the gas and run us out of our own gym and scored 74 points in the second half. Luke Kennard was left open for multiple threes, while Wemby had a dominant first half offensively. Uh, was really kind of out of the flow of the game. Kind of the guys that were really the energy centers for us in this one, I'd say, were Stephon Castle and Keldon Johnson. And one of the things I'll say here is that the Grizzlies apparently read their scouting report the way they were sagging off Stephon Castle from three. And I was glad that he finally started to take advantage of that, which was just like, okay, I'm not hitting him from three. He went 2 of 9 from three that game and started diving towards the basket. And he ended the game with 26 points. And I think we look at that stat line and we're like, this is a solid game for Stephon Castle. I personally, I thought it was a bit of a hollow 26 because of the way that he was left open so much and he was just not the focal point of their defense. It was like, let that guy go and score 26 points. And this is more speaking to the offensive production of it. At least he was still giving energy and effort even when the game got out of hand. So I do got to commend him on that. But what do you guys got on this one? Zach, you were at the game actually, so I think this is your time to cook, King.
I don't think you want that. No, first half was good. I mean, the Memphis Grizzlies figured out that Zach Edey probably is going to be a good matchup for Wemby on the offensive and defensive end. Yanked him there in the second half. Went completely small ball. And as you said, AB, you want to see a team that spaces the floor out. Watch the Spurs play and then watch the Memphis Grizzlies come back on the offensive end. And you're like, we're playing two different sports here. Like are they playing on a different size court than us? Like I feel like they have more of a half. I think what they have a 3/4 court on their end because they just have so much space. It's ridiculous. And it's an impressive offense. It's once again it's like Mike D'Antoni's 7-second offense, but on steroids. They have so many players that can beat you off the dribble. Impressive basketball team. I think they're the scariest basketball team in the Western Conference after this week, after what I saw, to be completely honest. They can shoot, they can score, and it's shocking because you could see the lead slipping away, slipping away, slipping away, and they're just going to the same one on one, one on one, one on one. And you know what? Call a spade a spade. Wimby had a tough game on Wednesday in the second half. The first half, he was awesome. Second half, the Grizzlies really made him work on the defensive end. I don't think I've seen a team all season. Maybe, yeah, I probably couldn't, especially being in person, been blessed to go to a few games, and I feel like I left that game really concerned for the team defense. If it felt like the Grizzlies came out and were playing like playoff basketball in the second half. The way they schemed on the Spurs, the way they schemed against Wimby, the way they were focused on attacking one or two certain focal points, which you see a lot of in the playoffs. It honestly felt like they took Houston's blueprint, and those are the two teams that have given the Spurs the most fits, and I think Wimby the most fits. And the way they play them, they sag off, they make the others beat you, and if the others aren't going to beat you, then Wimby isn't going to beat
Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. Lifted Wemby off of his feet multiple times in these two games just by backing him down. I don't know if y'all saw that, but he would just
you.
like chicken wing that elbow in, and he just knew right where to do it, where it was lifting Wemby off so he could get better positioning on the defensive end. But Tom, what do you got on this one?
I mean, you brought up the physicality there. Memphis is a gritty team, physical team, tough team, divisional rival. I feel like we have so much hate in our hearts for the Rockets that sometimes we forget that these we got to deal with these Bears also, and and they play like a similar style of being a gigantic pain in the ass, and I say that with full respect and like love. Actually, like I love that gritty basketball still lives on, right? I hate when the Spurs are a victim of it, and I hate when they measure up short in a game like this, especially on your home court. Uh, Especially you lead by a dozen at halftime, the other team adjusts, keeps up the physicality the whole game, but makes the tactical adjustments and runs you out of your gym, outscores you by 26 in the second half. That's not great. One thing that got a lot of attention from this game, more than like anything that happened in this game, and we probably should just like talk about it for a second, was the whistle blew and Jaw jumped, and so did Wemby, and there was as Big Justice and the Rizzler would say, a big boom, and it was jaw booming on Wemby. And I mean, I know. Listen, obviously that's our dude, and he got boomed on, and that stinks, right? But what I think is great, what I think is amazing, is that those two guys jumped. You know, purely for pride. There was nothing to gain. They both just like saw red, saw each other, and said, "All right, meet me at Valhalla, bro. Let's see who gets this one." Just for pride, and I love that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that so
like
much.
Wemby, I will say like he gets dunked on,
Oh yeah,
but like he plays a game where that's going to happen anyway. And one, I mean, shout out to Ja Morant for doing it. That dude is an athletic freak.
three syllable
One,
athlete.
yeah, and then Wemby like still going there and still trying to like make a point for himself. Like I like to see that, and he's gonna get yammed on. We've seen it by Kobe White. We saw it in the Miami big game by Kel'el Ware. Like it's gonna happen, but I never see that deter him. What was that? It was like DeAndre Hunter with the Hawks that did it and then stared him down and then he like said, "Okay." I mean, I think he's one of these dudes sometimes who like likes getting punched in the mouth and he's like, "All right, now I'm ready to go."
It's one thing when it's like, all right, yeah, he's gonna get dunked on because he's trying to block all these shots because he's trying to win the game, and like good for him. And I think this was like even like this was so great to me because it was a dead ball thing, and both guys knew it was a dead ball thing, and they just had that like, "Arr." But Ja winning that I think was a microcosm of the Grizzlies winning that whole, uh, you know, mano a mano type of who's going to be the bigger, stronger bully here, and it was not the Spurs, and that continued into the next game, right? And where they got, I mean, same story, right?
No
Third
Ja
quarter,
Morant in this game, though.
no John Morant, which stinks, and he got blown out by worse. The freaking Santi Aldama game, my goodness. Whoo! Mr. Aldama, my apologies. I was not familiar with your game, except literally he's never scored 29 points before. Ever. Like this was a career high game. He looked like I think I tweeted this during the game, but it was like if Wilt and Klay Thompson had a baby. It was unbelievable. I've never seen like it was like Wemby got put into a human's body for a second and was like just still really really good. Wild. Santi Aldama.
Restricted free agent in 2025. Santi Aldama. Spurs, maybe go run up the price on that contract so at least
We
the
just entered
Grizzlies get a year.
2025, didn't we?
Yeah, that's a that. I mean, that game, man. Like both these games, like I said, Zach, I kept coming back to like at the beginning of the year. You specifically said like we lack wing depth, and we've talked throughout the season about the lack of a proper backup big, and then we've had like the Devin Vassell conversation. But man, when I just look at these top teams in the league, like they just have length and bodies to be throwing out at each other. And not just that, like with Memphis, man, like they're gritty on defense and they just run your ass out of the gym. I mean, Luke Kennard on that game, he did like a little like drive, jump stop, and then just like shot it in Champagne's eye, I believe. I think it was Champagne on that one. And yeah, it was very much more. I'd say that that Memphis game was the more disappointing loss of the entire week for me. Um, on that Friday, just because Jaws out. Okay, now we're favorites. Okay, like even though Jaws not here, Wemby's not going to get revenge on that. Like, let's do something. And this was something where, I mean, we could talk about the 16-0 run. Mitch Johnson did have a timeout. He had three still left in the half. Still not really sure what happened there. Um, Wemby looked exhausted this game. Like there were a couple times in the fourth where there was a little bit more of a fight back, and like he wasn't even making it down court uh, for a couple series, and so that's something that's really got to be addressed is just like not just his minutes, but the type of minutes he's playing because the usage for him on defense, and once again, like you have Jaren Jackson essentially knocking the wind out of you, and then you have to go and be like the offensive hub. It's something that like I don't really think we've seen in a long time. Um, you know, Kevin Durant has never been asked to take on that much of a defensive burden before. Steph Curry, James Harden, Luka Doncic, like these are all like offensive hubs. I mean, even LeBron James during those Miami Heat years, because he had Chris Bosh and he had D Wade, he could be more of the focal point and the playmaker on offense. Um, so it's one of those things where I kind of keep coming back to like it's not just like a normal conditioning for Wemby. He has to be like exceed even that expectation for himself because of how hard these minutes are on him. So, what do you got on this one, Zach?
I mean, what do you want me to say? They
Nothing.
played like not that great. They came out flat. They talked all that, saying we're gonna love people that shit talk. We're gonna come out and play Friday, and unfortunately, we did not see too much of that. But it's all good. I expected two losses this week. Didn't expect them to be that bad. I think we just kind of got a little. I think I'm appreciating and respecting what Memphis does a little more. You know, it's not just looks good on paper; it looks good in person too.
It's a great.
Yeah.
I think that second game, while it is really disappointing for the Spurs, it's also a great reminder that like what Memphis does and who they are transcends just their spectacular point guard John Morant. You know, they have a um, you know, like they might be the grittiest, toughest, most no nonsense, whatever the hell they wrote out in Miami team in the league right now. But Miami still clearly has like a little bit of it, and the Spurs just got one last kick in the pants before crossing the pond in South Beach. Um, you know,
Ooh.
Stop me if you heard this one before, but they got blown out in the third quarter and lost by a lot.
Yep. And same thing that we said. They took some of what Memphis did, and even though Memphis didn't put Zach Edey, back out there in those games, he also got busted in that second game. His face got popped pretty bad. Uh, Miami decided to throw out a lineup that they'd never had, or that they'd had very few minutes on, of Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo. And much like in the Memphis game, with what they did was they put Santi Aldama on Victor, and they put Jaren Jackson on Stephon Castle. Were able to sag off of Stephon Castle with their potential Defensive Player of the Year candidate and bring extra help to Wemby. Miami Heat did the same thing. They put Bam out on the perimeter, and they had Kel'el Ware in the post, and it was just a nuisance. And I thought this was like, with all the Jimmy Butler drama, I was like, Jimmy Butler, chaos agent for the Spurs, please. Not so much. Just Heat culture getting the better of us on that one.
This is insane. In the second quarter of this game, with 8:56 left in it, Trey Jones hit a three to put the Spurs up 39-26. And for the remaining 9 minutes of the first half, the Spurs scored 2 points.
Woof.
Woof indeed. Like,
Highlight of this game was Trey
gross.
Jones getting a dunk, which I did not know he could do. Uh,
Yeah, you can kind of get up
We're
there,
grasping at
but yeah,
straws.
man, this was rough, dude. This was a really rough situation here, and yeah, too much of the same. Um, Man, Wemby missed a couple of free throws in a row in that stretch. I wonder if they got free Miami stuff. I don't know. I don't know what they got over there. Whatever Miami Chick-fil-A nuggies are. Maybe they got
yeah,
Chick-fil-A over there.
potentially. What
Um,
about you, Zach? Anything on this one?
Once again, you're just kind of lost for words watching this. It's they're in a funk. I mean, that's all you can really say. They're in a funk. They're missing shots. They're playing sloppy basketball. They're giving up. It's not even, and honestly, it's not even the missing shots part. It is they are leaking points at a high rate, and it is not sustainable. That this is you're on a crash course for trouble if they keep this up. And once again, it's just Mitch Johnson made a comment yesterday saying, "Oh, they've had a little slump," and I don't basically insinuating that he doesn't want the media to think that Spurs are like 1 foot in, 1 foot out in Paris, essentially. Like the team just wants to get to Paris. And he's like, I don't want, and not to say that's the case, but in the back of your mind, you want to play in that Paris game, and like so I subconsciously whatever the players want to play in the Paris game. This is a good time to get their worldwide brand out there in another country. I get it. It's hard. It's a 2 o'clock game, Miami. You're gonna be in France. You got practice in France on Monday afternoon. I'm not making excuses. It's just it looked like there in the second half. They were just like, get us on the plane. Let's get to France. Let's get this party started.
so I think it's not you're not wrong. I don't think it's a you know, we're looking ahead to that like type of like bringing a losing mindset thing. I think it's more just Wemby and these guys are they look a little gassed. Like they look like they have been playing this brutal January schedule that we talked about at the end of December, and we're like, mm, this is this is gonna be like a 20-degree morning in January for like all of January basketball
Hmm.
wise,
It's
right?
not stopping.
And so it's not stopping. It's ceaseless, right? But you know that you have that little, you know, oasis. Go across the ocean, play 2 games in a week, and get a chance to like get things right, right? Like that's on the calendar, right? And like, if you've ever been at work when you're like short, you were short during the holidays and it got busy and you've been catching up and busting your butt just to, do what you absolutely have to do your job. And there's all this other stuff that you got to do and you're just like, I got no bandwidth for anything right now. But you know that like people are getting back from trips back home and you're making some new hires and like you're getting help soon, right? You're getting some reprieve soon, right? When that's coming and you're struggling, it's understandable that some things are going to slip. It's been brutal to have it slip for 3 games and in a way that feels like a real pummeling. During this losing streak, um, it feels like they're getting shot out of the building some nights. The discrepancy with 3 point, like points from 3 point, is not that high. It's like, you know, 24 points between the Spurs and their opponents that they're getting outscored by in this stretch. It's the paint.
The
They're getting
paint.
outscored 184 to 134 in the paint during this losing streak. And in every game, their opponents scored more than 60, and in no game did the Spurs score more than 50. So, that's like a very clear sign to me that your best player is really shot right now and needs to go to his home and
Home cooking.
get some home cooking. I am sure like something like that can obviously be really distracting, right? I'm sure his phone has been blowing up. I'm sure it's a logistical nightmare and just like so much going on. I'm also
Hmm.
sure that like Wemby as an individual and the Spurs as an organization have put a lot of thought into managing this trip and making it as um, business as usual, as focused, as conducive to winning basketball games as possible. So with that on the horizon, I think it sort of makes sense to have a little slip in quality here at the end. It stinks to see though. Um,
Totally. Well, that was the week that was, and Tom, I really appreciate the way you put a bow on that. There was a video that came out with Mamu and Wemby talking about France, and in the video, Mamu was like, "Well, like, where's the best like place to get French food?" And Wemby was like, "My mom's house." He's like, "I want to have the whole team over to my house for dinner." So like, I just hope with some of the body language, especially I saw in that Miami game, like that some good home cooking. You kind of like have to sit in it together with those long flights, rodeo road trips coming up in February. Like, just figure this out. We kind of talked about this at the beginning of the month again. Like, you gotta bust through that wall, but the only way is through. And so, this is just what it's like to try and get through. So, with all that being said, let's transition to a little bit of high praise. So, welcome back. It's high praise. Always crack up on this.
let's see
And
if we can get Zach to crack a smile.
Zach left it blank here, so I don't think he's got anything
I have
high
nothing
praise
to
to
say.
say this week.
I have nothing to say.
Fair enough. All
What you
right,
want to
I
lie?
got
Want me to
something.
lie?
I mean, I got some good stuff here at least. Someone I don't think I've given high praise for all season long yet is Keldon Johnson. Um, man, the dude does still sometimes have brain farts on the defensive end, but I gotta say, he locked up John Morant a few times when he was put on him. Like played really solid D. He was being the heartbeat of the team, especially from an offensive standpoint. And sometimes I'll be honest, like I don't always want Keldon to be that, but you can really see sometimes that energy and that effort like just really come through. And there was a really interesting stat that came out earlier this week in Matthew Tynan's newsletter, Corporate Knowledge. Um, Highly recommend y'all go subscribe to that. But Keldon Johnson is top 10 league wide with 1.21 points per possession in isolation per synergy data. Keldon Johnson and Stephon Castle are the two guys that we can count on to get downhill and drive. It's not real. I mean, Harrison Barnes does it, but he does it so slow. Like, once again, you compare to like the Memphis team, who all they had like driving quickly downhill. And so one of the things I love about Keldon is the way he puts that pressure on the rim with that, and he's got certain moves and drop offs that I'm very excited to see. I think he's kind of fully developed into what he is essentially, but within the right fit of this team, like it is a very helpful skill to have. So I'll give my high praise to Keldon Johnson. Tom, what do you
I
got?
I did not realize that his ISO numbers were that good. Shout out to you, Matthew Tynan. Uh,
Top 10 in the league,
yeah,
like not by
especially because you
position.
think of him so much as a play finisher, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
ideal role, he's not initiating your offense, but, like, you know, there's a lot of times when and especially coming off the bench, you know, play breaks down and he gets after it. Good to know. Um, this is gonna be a really unpopular one. People are gonna hate me for this one. People are gonna yell at me. It's gonna I mean, I'm gonna make a lot of people mad with this. Um, my high praise is going to, uh, Pop, Brian Wright, R.C. Buford, the front office, popping the
Oh
pat
man, you are gonna.
I'm
People are
stepping in it. I'm stepping
coming
all the
in the
way in it.
mentions.
Um, you know, yeah, shout out to the glorious leaders, but for real though, um, I actually I'm being very serious here when I say that the Spurs long term are still in a really awesome position. As frustrating as this month has been, right? Like and I know like we talk about this all the time, right? Both basketball wise and life and you know, it's got many applications, but like when it's getting really tough, if you can zoom out, a lot of times that helps, right? And you zoom out until you can see more of the full picture. And if you zoom out really, really far with the Spurs, uh, this is a team that a decade ago was hoisting their fifth championship trophy in 15 years, right? Um, a true dynasty, right? And over the 8 years or so that followed, they went to the middle and then to the bottom where they were bad enough to get a 14% chance at Victor Wembanyama. And then the fate of the franchise turned uh, on a ping pong ball, right? So we are now a year and a half, call it, into Wemby's career, right?
Tom,
Uh,
this reminds me of what you tweeted out earlier this week. That graph of like
yeah,
you are
and
here.
it's more Kurt Vonnegut on the Silver and Black Coffee Hour, but like, and I think we I've definitely talked about this before into a microphone about basketball, but maybe on this show, maybe not. But like the shape of a story, right? And so they I don't know how this will pop up on screen, but like, we were up here, dynasty, woo. Now we're down here, and it's really not fun. And like we're coming out of it now, and like they're trying to get back up to here, right? That's the goal. That's the obvious trajectory for a player like Wemby, is get back to being him being the cornerstone of a dynasty in San Antonio once more, right? Nobody thought that was going to you know that he was going to match Tim Duncan with a championship in his second year. I don't think anybody thought that. Um, but like, I think that the way this team is constructed, and the flexibility that they have, and the assets that they have, um, I said it on the last show. I'll say it again. I think this team is a second star and a good backup center away from 50 plus wins, and like winning a playoff series, maybe, or at least, competing in a playoff series. Like, I think that they're that close already. And so, for as frustrating as this has been, and man, it's been frustrating, um, I think that you do have to, take a deep breath and take a zoom out, and understand that, like, you know, even if they're not that aggressive at the deadline, I hope they're aggressive at the deadline. I really hope they're aggressive at the deadline. But even if they're a little bit more methodical, we know that it's not about this year, right? Um, Still, I want this year to be as good as possible, But like,
Totally.
I think that they've already overperformed a lot of people's expectations for this year.
Well, I think that's why more people are upset, is because
Yeah,
the expectations were raised through this season. So I'll end it with this before we go to our questions for the week. And it's from a controversial movie called Vanilla Sky. The sweet just isn't as sweet without the bitter in between. We're in the in between here, y'all. So, embrace the journey, make friends along the way. Because I want to have like the best drinking buddies when this thing pops off.
I'm
So
gonna be at the next parade asking people where they were when we were arguing about Bryn Forbes and Lonnie Walker on Twitter. I'm gonna be like, "Were you don't remember? You don't remember what it was like?"
honestly, I hope people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I'll
Yeah,
be like,
there's gonna be a
that's
lot.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for a whole, but whatever, but like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's the more of that you see, the more I'm gonna enjoy when like stuff like that seems so far away.
totally. Well, hey, let's jump into questions for the week. So, for these questions, Zach, I know you haven't talked a lot during that because you didn't have much high praise, and I want to respect your feelings. But I want you to make sure that you feel heard and seen. So I'll say this to kick this off. Um, my first question for this week is Mitch Johnson said after the Memphis game that they've got to get back to what their identity is. So, what is the identity of this team, or what do we think they want the identity of this team to be? Zach, my king, go off.
This team has an identity issue. They're like a chameleon, always a different color, different shade, different this. They can. There's not really one set. I think a good example, I guess, is the Lakers game on Monday when the old men had to win the game. First time all season we saw them do that. Pull those plays out, pull that bag of trick out, get to those sets because they need to get there because once again there is really no identity right now. They win. I feel like each win this season has come differently. It's a different way they've won. It's not a consistent like product on the court yet. Not hating on it, not saying it's a bad thing, and it helps for the future because then you've learned and you once again on the job training, and we know we can adjust. We can get to these different things. We can do that. But right now, this team has an identity issue, and not an identity crisis, but it's an identity issue. And I do think that it is sort of like a chameleon. One day it's this, the next day it's that, and that's kind of the way I look at it. Like,
I think it's
Yeah.
hard when like you're right that it's been a different team every night and they're winning games and losing games in different ways. Um, I think be it would be one thing if it was like a Belichickian art of war, like we change the approach to every opponent because every opponent has a unique weakness that we're trying to exploit with our strengths. Like if that was how you were, morphing from one game to the next, that would be cool. This has more been, you know, it's been a little less methodical than that. I think it's been a little more, feeling where they fit in and how like it's too much reactivity, right? It's too much letting the opponents dictate the style of play, the pace, the physicality, the level of aggression. Um, and I don't think that the Spurs have a reputation or identity at this point beyond they are the team with Wemby, and Wemby's going to Wemby on you. And, you know, it's a conversation we've had before on this show, right? Like, who's coming for the ride? And ideally, that's not a game to game question. And if it is, ideally, you know the answer before the fourth quarter,
Well,
right?
in the you said Belichickian style. I think the Spurs are getting that thrown at them night because of the roster imbalance and because of the identity issue, the identity crisis that they have with growing as a team. This is just a growth process. You're not going to know who you are. When we were 16 years old, we are still figuring out compared to who we are at 30. There's a process that goes into these things. So it's not me like calling it a bad thing, but there is just a because of Wimby, I do think it makes everyone's job easier and harder. I think there's a give and take.
It
Yeah.
makes obvious what the approach if when you've got a strength that's strong, right? It's obviously going to have a target
Mm-hmm.
on it, right? You know that that's going to be where you make or break it, and that's why for me watching this team, I see more like, okay, yeah, you really need a second star to take the pressure off guy. Somebody who can like be the offensive threat when he goes to the floor off the floor. Somebody who can stretch the defense out, like somebody that you can rely on every single night to impact the game in a positive way, to complement Wemby's skills, and steady things in his absence. Right. Uh,
Hmm.
Same goes for a backup center. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I don't really have anything to add to this, y'all. I think y'all kind of covered it, and I really want to get to these stats Zach has been teasing us with for like the last hour. So, next question. How concerning is the last 2 weeks in the big scheme of things? And Zach, this was the question you wrote for us. So tell us what made you come to that question.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it means much. This season, we'll look back on it in hopefully 5 years as Tom had his little take about the back office and the GMs about how they set us up to succeed. Not disagreeing with that one bit. So I don't think in the grand scheme of things, this week of basketball or these last 2 weeks of basketball or the fact that they're playing terrible defense is going to come back in 3 years. We're going to remember January 20th and say, oh, well, remember, I just think it's going to be part of the growth process. But they're the second to give perspective of how bad the last three games are. In the second half, they're giving up 80 points a game. 79.3 points a game the last three games in the second half. It's not that great. I mean, that you're going to lose a game doing that. And they're giving the opponent's 3-point percentage is the best in the league, 46%. No one's shooting better from behind the arc against Spurs the last 3 games than that. Also, the team's true or NBA team's opponent floor percentage is the floor percentage is ratio based on possessions and total possessions, like you score off. Spurs are giving up 63% of 63% shooting on that. The next worst is 55%. So I mean, if we're putting numbers together, it's just not great. It's been really bad this week. It's been a poor week of basketball. Some
Ooh,
of I think the 80 points a game in the second half is tough. Uh,
yeah, I'd say so.
they're giving up the second worst field goal percentage in the league right now, 53% the last 3 games. I mean, you're giving up 53%. You do the math. Usually, you try to keep that number below 50%. If it's, I mean, it's we're off. He's had a rough week. We're in a slump. I think that's the best way to put it. We played two teams that really identified and targeted the Spurs. So my short answer is I'm not scared of the in the grand scheme of things what this week does. My long answer is the stats don't look that good.
Damn.
So I think overall, my main concern is more just for what it means for this season, right? We were talking about the cliff face, right? Like there's a path, but there's also like like there's a nice thin path that you could keep going
Hmm.
up, but also like really couldn't afford to slip the way that they did in the last few games, and now it's like now you're stumbling and bumbling, and um, there's a real danger of things falling out of the happy fun place where the Spurs have been for this season, where they're fighting for that playing spot, where they're playing competitive basketball, where they're around 500 or a little bit above or a little bit below. Um, this threatens to be like a jumping off point, but not in a good way, you know? And so
I think
that
it. Sorry, Tom, to interrupt. I think we kind of were asking for answers during this time, like with the front office, and if it'll lead to like a trade. And this is like when you see numbers like that, like I think as a front office person, I'd be like, obviously there's a problem here. No, I'm not going to make a trade mid-season about like to shore this up. In some ways, I would imagine that they would punt it and just say, okay, like this is what this is. I have some questions about other people and just get some more of those answers on, whether it's the bench unit, whether it's people like Mamu Kelishvili, whether it's, I mean, I think we kind of have the answer on Malachi Branham for the most part with the way he plays. Is Blake Wesley something else that like needs to be answered or not? But I think getting kind of those other pieces going into the off season is probably what um, will need to be answered here.
well,
But
people are going to be even madder at you than they are at me. But hey,
I'm more predicting. I mean, I'm
yeah.
with you. Like, of course I'd love a backup big. Of course I'd love a second star. And you know, like during these times, it's hard. Like, cause like I have this new expectation of this team, and they're going against it. So yeah, like I get
So
upset. But
these last we talked about how awful these last few games have been in the paint in the second half, in the backbone department, in the don't let yourself get shoved in a locker department. And so I guess part of the reason that I don't view this as like a real indictment of the roster is because of the context of it's been a brutal stretch, and also um like you're missing the guy who would help most in a situation like this in Jeremy Sochan, right? Who's been out
yep,
for these 3 games. um I think if I had to pick like two teams that I least wanted to play without Jeremy Sochan, like outside of the Rockets, it's probably Grizzlies and Heat are up there, right? Just with their style of play and identity, right? And the Spurs don't have an identity as a like, bully physical team. But Jeremy Sochan has that reputation as a player and well earned.
Hmm.
So my question is, does this team need Jeremy Sochan, or should they just like trade him for whatever?
Uh,
And it's
Fuck
kind of
yeah.
a rhetorical question.
They need Jeremy Sohan, man. Like
All hands on deck.
there's so really interesting stat I looked up earlier today on StatMuse, just looking at over the last 10 games, like the plus minus of the starters, and then compared it to Jeremy's like previous 10 games before he got hurt. Um, Wemby and Harrison Barnes are the only two people in the plus category. Chris Paul was a -4. Devin Vassell was a -62. Uh, and I believe Stephon Castle was close to like a -14.
The Vassell numbers are insane. We talked about this last time, but like I genuinely don't even know how it's mathematically possible what's happening there.
I don't either, but all that is to say is that Jeremy, when he was on the floor, like was a positive player. And I wouldn't even necessarily include at the moment like his two previous games before they just kind of really sat him down. I'd say that this kind of started, from the Clippers game when he hurt his back at the end of the year. So yeah, I mean, like that, it's kind of another thing out there. But as we are running along here, um, let's just hop into the next week. Two games. That's all we got. They're against the same team, Indiana, one of the hottest teams in the Eastern Conference right now. And here's where the Spurs are sitting as far as our net rating and everything. We're 19th. Our offensive rating is 18th. Our defensive rating is 16th. And we are still 23rd in 3-point percentage shooting. Now, this is not the Indiana Pacers team of last year where they did not play defense and they shot the shit out of the ball. This year, they actually play defense. And right now, they have a net rating of 14th. They have an offensive rating of 10th, a defensive rating of 21st, and they are 7th in 3-point shooting. 21st in defensive rating doesn't sound like they're very good, but it's a lot better than last year when they just allowed people to walk all over them in the paint. And they were just like, we're going to try and outscore you. So one of these games is technically a home game for them, and one of them is technically a home game for us. Uh, so yeah, what do you guys got on the Indiana Pacers in Paris?
I think this is gonna be, I this is one of those games where I hope Jeremy is healthy for, right? Not from like a physical bully you perspective, because that's not what worries me about the Pacers, but just overall having somebody to stick Hallie, the defense, the connectedness on the wing, right? That's another thing that's been missing here. And so if you're without him, then you're looking at another, tough matchup for Steph Castle. You're looking at, you know, it's going to be tough to stop the Pacers from scoring, but also this whole circus atmosphere, like, you know, this is almost more of like uh, a bullfight, and they're not the bull, and everybody's rooting for the bull. You know, like there it's going to be that sort of environment. I don't think there's any Indiana Pacers fans in France. I could be wrong. Um, Probably not, though. Is if I had to get. I'm sorry if we have anybody who listens to this podcast who is in France and is also a Pacers fan. If so, I hope you see stuff that makes you sad this week.
What do you got on this one, Zach?
A Rick Carlisle offense is always fun to watch, always tough to guard. So I'm excited to see he's also a spacer of the floor. He loves spacing the floor. I mean, they're going to attack the Spurs on offense. I think the Spurs got to make them work on defense. I think there's a lot of points to be scored in these games, especially with it being a circus-like atmosphere. You know, these guys are going to make a name for themselves on both sides of the ball, as I mentioned. Your international brand. This is let's call a spade a spade. Are you trying to get yourself new fans? Go make some plays. It's going to be interesting basketball. I'm expecting some high-scoring, dunk-filled, 3-point shot basketball games. What's the issue? I just better see some wins.
Man, yeah, dude. I think the Pacers also are just going to be one of these teams that have some real remember some guys on them, like Aaron Nembhard and Benedict Mathurin.
Fun basketball.
And I think as Spurs fans, the guys that those are two guys where I always watch them like, man, they look good in silver and black, man. But yeah, interesting 2 games in Paris. So with that being said, we always end this with our predictions for the week. We only got 2. Zach, kick us off.
Well, you know, I'm always Mr. Optimism, always Mr. looking at the glass half full when it comes to these predictions. I say they go 1-1. I don't think they lose 5 in a row. So.
All right, Tommy.
Give me 2 wins because this team is so hot and cold. Give me 2
I knew you were gonna do it.
Give me 2-0.
You were gonna do it. Man, I love that. I'm going 1-1. The environment has to give one at least, man. Yeah. It just has to. So I'm really looking forward to it. There was a video where Jeremy Sochan looks good, and they have said that they're looking at him playing in at least one of these games. The games are early as well. Thursday, 1 p.m. Central. And then once again on Saturday, that game will tip off at 11 a.m. We will be at the Armadillo Den with the Spurs watch party. So come out and see us. And fellas, anything y'all want to say before we sign off?
With the cold weather and the early games, I'll share an old proverb from Boston, which is you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning.
Zach?
Let's go watch some basketball. Hopefully our days aren't ruined, right early. I think that'd just be the worst. It's like watching your soccer team in the morning, waking up, Premier League's on, and they get run out of the gym. It's like, I'm going to go throughout the whole day with this on my chest. So last 11 o'clock game, Wimby showed out against the Knicks. Hoping we get another one on Saturday. So come out and see the boys.
I want to get this game. I want to hear these games with a French broadcast crew.
That would be tight.
I don't need to understand it. Like Charlie X said, talk to me in French, talk to me in Spanish. Doesn't matter if I understand it.
Okay.
I love that. Well, everybody, drip your faucets over the week. Make sure you're taking care of, stay warm, and take care of each other. And we'll see y'all out there next week.
Plants, people, pets, and pipes. Peace.